Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I post movie and TV reviews as well as retrospectives for some of my favorite movies and franchises. Right now, we're working our way back through the MCU in my MCU Retrospective series. You can find the previous videos in the series inside the MCU Retrospective playlist on my channel. You can also find reviews for some movies and shows I recently did. I dropped a review for Doom Part 2 last week, as well as my thoughts on Reacher Season 2 this past Tuesday, so check those out if you're interested. Look out for my review of Killers of the Flower Moon coming this Saturday. And last but not least, if you like the content and want to support the channel, please like, share, subscribe, comment down below, and of course, tell your friends. I would greatly appreciate it. Now, let's dive back into Thor. I remember seeing this movie when it first came out at the drive-in theater. It was playing as a double feature along with the first Avenger, and going into it, I hadn't quite grabbed on to the shared universe concept yet. In fact, I was excited for just this movie as a standalone, and I didn't really have much interest at all in the first Avenger. If you've seen my retrospective on that film, you'll know that I came out with a complete opposite opinion after viewing both films. In the end, I did wind up preferring First Avenger over the original Thor. However, I do still love this movie. It's fun. It's a little melodramatic, a little goofy at times, and some of the effects don't quite hold up as well. The action is hokey sometimes, but the main focus of the story, well, two main focuses really, Thor's journey to a more humbled and benevolent king to be, and Loki's origin as a villain are both fantastically executed. In fact, I would argue that this is almost Loki's movie as much as it is Thor's. In one movie, the MCU gave us another fun hero to add to this roster, as well as the MCU's first great villain, and arguably one of the best villains the MCU has ever introduced. I think one of the most interesting aspects of this film is how both our hero and villain begin their journeys on opposite sides of the spectrum from one another. Thor is impatient, arrogant, pompous. He craves the spotlight, the fame of his title as Prince of Asgard, and he yearns to be king. He often acts without thinking and causes more mayhem than needs to be present. Loki, Thor's reserved yet intelligent brother, he spends his time in the shadows, playing his own game, using his wits and intellect to accomplish his goals. After Asgard is infiltrated by frost giants, the brothers, along with the Warriors 3 and Sif, travel to Jotunheim, home of the giants, to enact revenge for breaking the truce. This decision quickly becomes costly as the heroes become outnumbered, forcing Odin to intervene. Realizing Thor is not yet ready to lead, Odin banishes him to Earth, powerless and without his trusty hammer. Loki, not yet turned heel, feels sorry for his brother initially, until his true nature is revealed, an offspring of Laufey, king of the Frost Giants, who Odin adopted in the hope that it would bring peace between the two races. And this is where the film starts to get really good. Stuck on Earth, Thor meets scientist Jane Foster and her team, and he must learn to humble himself and become worthy of his powers and his title, to become a better leader. And back on Asgard, Loki, feeling used by Odin, becomes vengeful and resentful towards him, and in turn towards Thor, jealous of his love and notoriety that he has received all these years. And he takes the throne for himself. The journey that both of these characters go on to their ultimate fates is riveting. There isn't one time that you question either character's decisions or their actions. The story lays their paths out logically. You believe every move each character makes. You empathize with both of them. And the aspects that sell these two stories the most are the performances. Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston who the hell were these guys? Back in 2011, well, probably 2009 because these movies get cast years in advance, no one knew who these guys were. They both had experience at this point. They weren't completely unknown, but to a mainstream audience, they certainly were. I had no idea who either were, but kudos to Marvel because like a lot of their castings, they nailed these two as well. And it took some balls to go that route with your two main roles. But what a find. Both of these actors are a revelation in this movie. They both play their respected characters with such dedication. And both actors possess such an innate ability to transition into essentially a whole new character in the latter half of the film without missing a step. It's perfect casting. And I don't want this to take away from the rest of the cast because they're great as well. Although Thor and Jane's romantic connection feels sort of clunky at times, I think both Hemsworth and Portman do great with the script they're given. You may not feel the chemistry immediately, but you sense the potential for it. Portman is really good as this bright-eyed young scientist just trying to leave her mark on the world. Stellan Skarsgård is good as her mentor and colleague, Dr. Selvig. He keeps her character grounded and brings a level of seriousness to the portions on Earth that, if we're being honest, can get a bit silly at times. I'm not the biggest fan of Kat Dennings as Darcy. She's fine as the comic relief, however there are a few times when she can be a tad annoying or just feel downright unnecessary. But that's something I can definitely look past. Back on Asgard, casting Anthony Hopkins as King Odin was flawless. He fits the part beautifully. We don't really get much of Renee Russo as Queen Frigga, which is a shame because she is a great actress. Her character kind of gets sidelined quite a bit throughout this movie and even its sequel. I wish we got more of her because her quiet and intimate moments with Thor and Loki are so well done. Then we get Idris Elba as Heimdall. I love the way he plays this character. He's so regal yet mysterious. He doesn't get a lot of screen time, but whenever you see him, you think, yeah, this guy's a badass. Speaking of Asgard, I love the design. It's awe-inspiring, and the effects for the most part still hold up very well. It's grand and majestic, and it looks magical. You get the perception of a prominent and highly respected society of people, and you feel the tenability of this world. I think Branagh, even with some of his faults as a director, was a good choice to helm this movie. Choosing to take this film, specifically the sections of Asgard, the Shakespearean route, was a fantastic decision. These characters are ancient, right? Some of them thousands of years old. This story and these characters fit right in with that style and that old English theater motif. It even lends itself to a few comical fish out of water style antics when Thor spends his time on Earth. Now, I do enjoy this movie a lot, but it's not without its faults. I think the biggest downfall of Branagh's direction is the action. The action here just isn't very engaging or memorable. It's all shot and edited awkwardly to where you don't really see what's going on. It's all kind of slow. The first action sequence of the film takes place on Jotunheim, and it's just sort of ugly. The environment is so dimly lit, you can't see anything, and you don't really know who's fighting who. Even the last fight sequence with Loki, it's better and probably the best action sequence in the movie, but even that is a bit wonky. It's fun, but I think that it's mostly saved due to the performances in the characters' stories and their grievances that finally come to head with each other. Jotunheim is another issue that I had with this film. The set designs in this movie are phenomenal. Asgard looks great. The small town in New Mexico, they really built that town to film those scenes, and it looks, feels, and operates like a real small downtown area. But what the hell happened with Jotunheim? It's just this barren, desolate, gray blur. And it doesn't leave any sort of impression on you at all. It's just there and you're like, alright, that's a place. Outside of the action, this tends to be a big problem in the film. We spend so much time setting up certain places and characters that some characters and locations just feel like afterthoughts. The Frost Giants in general, you can pretty much just cut them from the movie and it wouldn't change anything. Outside of providing Loki's backstory, they don't really serve much of a purpose. In the comics, Laufey is one of Thor and Asgard's more formidable foes, and he's just so forgettable. This rings true with the Warriors 3 and Sif as well. They don't really do anything in this film, and they get even less to do down the line. You don't really have any attachment to these characters, so when their screen time gets cut even further, you tend not to care. There's also this weird setup of a possible romance between Thor and Sif that sort of continued into the sequel, but never really fleshed out, so it never comes up in any situation ever again. There's just a lot of fluff in this movie that could have been either cut out or built up on even more, but neither of those things happened, so we're just sort of stuck with this. It's a very weird route to take. But for the initial Thor film, I think it's pretty enjoyable. It's a breezy little film. It's not overly serious, which sometimes with classical lore like this, films or shows can fall into that trap. The film knows what it is. It's a comic book movie, and the writers and directors treat it as such. It has some negative aspects for sure, but overall, getting to watch Thor and Loki's journeys is satisfying. Even going forward, there are a few bumps in the road, but both of these characters' stories get even more interesting down the road. With its faults, I think this movie is a pretty good introduction to this side of this universe and these characters. If you don't agree with my take on the movie, that's fine. I think there is one place we can all find common ground, and it's that those bleached eyebrows are fucking terrible.